let's start by pointing out that in Scientology, someone like Tom Cruise, because he's best friends with David Miscavige, the head of Scientology, Tom Cruise makes his own rules. It might be more accurate to say David Miscavige breaks the rules for Tom Cruise. So anyone who thinks that the reason Tom Cruise was disconnected from his daughter Suri is because Scientology demanded it, that is actually not true. Tom Cruise could have been involved in his daughter Suri's life, even according to the rules of Scientology, while she was a child, a minor. Now, is it possible that him maintaining a connection to his daughter while his daughter had a connection to Katie Holmes, her mother, is it possible that that connection would have required Tom to put his Scientology courses and auditing on hold during that period of connection? It's possible. Being connected in Scientology to what Scientology calls a suppressive person makes you what Scientology calls a potential trouble source, PTS. Now, being PTS doesn't get you kicked out of Scientology. While someone is considered PTS, they cannot actively do courses or get auditing until that PTS situation is resolved. So if we were to just play by the Scientology rules, and if we called Katie Holmes a suppressive person, which, by the way, she's not. Katie Holmes has never publicly attacked or criticized Scientology in any way. And spoiler alert, divorcing Tom Cruise does not make someone a suppressive person. Okay. So whereas Scientologists might casually consider Katie Holmes to be a suppressive person, she's not, Scientologically speaking, actually an SP. But if we call Katie Holmes an SP, and if we call Tom Cruise PTS for having a connection to Suri, who has a connection to Katie, all it would mean is that Tom would have to just put his Scientology auditing and courses on hold as long as he had a connection to his daughter. And the Scientology strategy on this would have been for Tom to stay in Suri's life until she was old enough to legally make her own decisions, and then convince Suri to disconnect from Katie. And then that would handle the PTS situation. Tom Cruise would no longer be PTS, and he would be able to resume doing Scientology auditing and training. Now, that's what the plan would have been if Tom Cruise had to play by Scientology's rules, which, as I said, he does not. Tom does not have to play by Scientology's rules because David Miscavige breaks Scientology's rules specifically for Tom Cruise. It has always been my belief, purely belief, I don't have any inside sources in the Tom Cruise camp, purely my belief that it was simply part of Tom and Katie's divorce agreement that he would have no contact or visitation with Suri. Now, even as I say that, I'm questioning myself because I distinctly remember that there was a short period after the divorce when Tom very visibly still had visitation with Suri. I distinctly remember seeing in the newspapers and the tabloids, Tom and his sister and his nieces and his nephews carrying Suri through like Central Park and stuff. And it was crazy to me because I know Tom's sisters. I know Tom's nieces and nephews. They're all Scientologists here in the Clearwater area. His sister, Marion Henry, was my realtor and a good friend of mine. Her son, Cal Henry, and Cal's wife, Marjorie, were good friends of mine. So it was funny to me to see these guys literally on like the covers of tabloids with Suri Cruise. And then, you know, the next week they're back here in Clearwater at the barbecue. When I say that Tom could have maintained a connection to Suri, I'm speaking from some personal anecdotal experience. When I was younger, I have a younger brother who's still in Scientology. I don't talk about him much. Most Scientologists may not even know that he is my brother. He lives here in Clearwater, Florida. He's not even really a Scientologist, but because his dad is a Scientologist, he has disconnected from me. His name is Darius DiMartino. His dad is Frank DiMartino. His stepmom is Pat DiMartino. Everyone in Clearwater, Florida is going to know Darius or Pat or Frank. when I was little, when my younger brother Darius was little, he's 6 years younger than me. When Darius was about, God, I want to say 2 or 3 years old, Frank was declared a suppressive person. And Frank was working through his steps of how to get back into the good graces of Scientology. In Scientology, it's called the A to E steps. And Frank was declared a suppressive person, but because his son was a minor child, and my mom and Frank had already gotten divorced at this point, because their son was a minor child and because they shared custody, even Scientology said that, yes, of course, my mom had to let Frank see Darius. And Frank would come and take Darius every weekend, and they would go to Cape May, to where Frank lived. And, we were too young at that point to even know that Frank was declared or what that meant. But I learned all about this later on. So I'm just giving you an anecdotal experience, anecdotal story, an anecdote where a Scientologist who was a declared suppressive person shared custody of a child with a Scientologist, and the parental connection, the familial connection, was permitted to continue because the law required it. And that's for someone like Frank DiMartino, who isn't Tom mother effing Cruise. Okay. So the idea that David Miscavige would insist that Tom Cruise sever all ties with his daughter, Suri Cruise, just because Katie Holmes left him. No. Tom Cruise decided that he wasn't going to have this relationship. If he wanted to have this relationship with Suri, the most likely time for that to have occurred is when she was actually a minor child and where Tom Cruise was legally not only allowed to, but some might say obligated to be in her life.